So we'll now call the meeting of the Transportation and Circulation Committee to order. And we'll start with a roll call.
Committee Member Bosch.
Here.
Burnham.
Here.
Kaufman-Gray.
Here.
France.
Here.
Horn.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Chair Blackerby.
Here. And we'll do a little introduction, have the new folks introduce themselves in a couple moments. But one, I wanted to see if there's any public comment on items not on the agenda. There is not. Next is the consent calendar approval of the minutes from our December 13th meeting. So if there are any questions, obviously the people who weren't here may not want to vote on that, but
I move to accept.
all right. Ms. Kaufman-Gray, is there a second? A second for Ms. Horn. All right. Any more discussion on the minutes? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. All right. And now, as promised, want to introduce our new committee members. And we have 2 new members, Cynthia Bosch and Bob Burnham. And we'll give you just a minute or so to introduce yourselves. If you want to start, Bob. You're good? Uh-huh.
I'm Bob Burnham. I just retired 2 years ago from Santa Barbara MTD after almost 32 years. I was a dispatcher most of the time, also in public relations, customer service. So my life's work has been in transportation, and I'm truly honored to have been appointed to a committee where I wanted to continue serving to help my city in many areas covering transportation and circulation. So I'm really delighted to be here.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Bosch?
I'm Cynthia Bosch. Coincidentally, I also currently work at MTD as the Assistant Planning Manager. Before I came to MTD, I lived in San Luis Obispo County, where I was a longtime transportation geek and served on the bicycle advisory committees and the County Planning Commission.
All right. Working your way down the coast. That's good. All right. Are there any other comments or anything about that? All right. Well, welcome to both of you, and we're really glad to have you. All right. Item number 4, review the MTD report for the second quarter, fiscal year 2013, and then the monthly reports for November through January. If there are any questions about those comments, possibly there are not. Is there anything to bring up on that? All right. Seeing none, we're moving right along. All right, we don't have to vote on that or accept it.
That's just an informational
Yeah,
item.
just informational. Okay, so item number 5, Safe Routes to School, Cleveland School Project. So we will have folks come on up. If you want to pick that up, put it up there.
Hi, so I'm Melinda Reese, project engineer in Public Works, and I'm here to present the Safe Routes to School Cleveland project that we've been working on. So our staff recommendation is that the Transportation and Circulation Committee find that the Safe Routes to School Cleveland project is consistent with the circulation element of the general plan. The project consists of improvements to 5 different intersections, all of which are on a suggested route to Cleveland Elementary School, as presented in the city's pedestrian master plan. At the intersections of Cañada and 500, Oak and Clifton, and Santa Ynez and Eucalyptus Hill Road, we're going to be proposing access ramp improvements. And then at the intersection of Salinas Street and Clifton Street, we're proposing pedestrian safety lighting. And then the biggest improvement in the project is the intersection of Salinas Street at Cacique Street, where we're actually looking at realigning that intersection. So the existing conditions at this intersection, the center line's actually offset by about 15 feet when you, from just north to south of the intersection. and the existing curb lines don't match that center line taper right now. So in order to improve this, we're looking at extending the center line taper to approximately 235 feet, which is an appropriate taper given the existing offset and the posted speed limit based on the California MUTCD. The proposed location of the taper along Salinas Street was determined based on trying to limit the hardscape improvements and therefore therefore keep the costs down. And we're still maintaining a 30-foot traveled way to accommodate 10-foot vehicular lanes and 5-foot shoulders for bicycle traffic in each direction. And so the benefits to the pedestrians here will be a shortened crossing distance and an improved starting position, since they'll be more visible to the approaching drivers. And there's also going to be no on-street parking removed by the project, and we might be able to add one spot actually, but that's going to have to be looked at after construction. And so for the funding for this project, we have two different grant sources that are contributing. Measure A, Safe Routes to School, we got a grant for $46,000, and that's being used towards the design. And then we also got a federal Safe Routes to School grant of $225,000, and that's all towards construction. So with the city chipping in about $40,000, we're looking at a total project cost of $311,000, 87% of which is grant funded. And then sort of alongside this project, shortly after, we're planning to install with city funds rectangular rapid flashing beacons at the intersections of Salinas and Clifton and Salinas and Gasique. And the plan is to have that be look pretty seamless with this project. And that about sums it up.
Okay. So do committee members have any questions? And it seems like there's not public comment on this. If there is, fill out a slip. But we can go ahead and take questions from the committee. Yeah, Mr. France?
I have a question regarding, there's a quick mention of parking as part of the realignment. So if we're looking at Salinas between Ensenada Street and Cacique Street,
yes.
Is there no existing parking on the south side now? What in the realignment?
Is your mic?
Pull it closer. It's on.
Okay.
But
Is there? Could you just explain a little bit more detail the current parking situation and how that might change?
Sure. So on the south side, in between Ensenada and Cacique, there's currently no on-street parking there. The existing extra wide driveway is there. That the parking in that parking lot is basically people pull straight in and then pull back out, and so we didn't want those businesses to lose any of that parking, so that's why we're maintaining that wide driveway. And so there's existing no on-street parking, so we're maintaining no on-street parking there.
Okay, so there's no net change in parking.
There's a chance that on the what is the north side on this, you want to point it out? Right now, so just to the left of where it just pointed right now, there's only one spot marked on street. The rest of that is red curb. So Derek's looking at evaluating that section of street after the construction to see if we can actually extend that from one spot to two.
So that's north of Cacique Street on Salinas Street on the east side of the street.
Yes.
Got it. If I could just make one quick comment in regards to that potential parking space. Since there is this realignment there's a slight directional shift as a motorist. Mm-hmm. In other words, you're kind of going straight and you're starting to turn a little bit. I have the misfortune, as well as many residents, of occasionally having to ride through that route as a cyclist. It gets very, very tight, and especially at a point where there's a realignment, I would, if I were a project engineer, I would err more towards the side, a little bit of extra space in the route for a bicyclist, because it's not a full bike lane throughout this street, but the route that the shoulder, effectively, as opposed to trying to squeeze a net extra parking space into the project. The project's got a lot of goals, and
right.
think that's fine.
Right, and that's why, I mean, it's going to be evaluated after to see if it does make sense or if it can be fit. It's not a plan to install it or not to at this point.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, Ms. Bush?
Yeah, that brings up a question of mine. I'm seeing bike lane striping in the proposed design that's not in the current plan, as far as I can tell. Is that are you going to add
so
bike
they're
lanes?
technically shoulders that are striped, and so they are going to be 5 feet wide through the intersection, so it will allow room for bicyclists, but they are shoulders, not bike lanes.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah, Swarn. I'm gonna give her the mic. Don't think it's on.
Is it on?
There you go.
Ah, there. That where the school is, Cleveland, up the hill, is just such a terrible location for kids getting to that spot. And so I went over and drove in some of those streets and looked at what you had on your map. Thank you for these great maps. And just wondering, what did you do to see where the problems were with the kids coming and going to school?
So I don't know.
Or did you hear from the parents, or how did it go?
Well, this grant application actually was generated, the first grant application with the Federal Safe Route to School was generated through our interaction with Coast and the school. So they have a really active Safe Route to School program. They identified the areas where they had concerns with their children being able to walk to and from school. So they identified the locations where they would like us to address. And the primary location they wanted us to address was Clifton at Salina Street. And then after we started taking a closer look at it, we saw Cacique Street was as big, if not a bigger problem, because of the offset of the intersection, how wide it is on the south side of the intersection at Cacique Street. But it was primarily because of the school and their involvement through our Safe Route to School program that we contract with Coast is how this became a concern and brought our attention to these two intersections.
Thanks.
Great.
Chair Blackerby, if I could ask just another question.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, thank you, Ms. Horn, for that question, because that brings back to mind. I've actually we did an event with Coast. It was a bike tune-up thing at one of the bike rodeos at Cleveland School. A lot of people might not realize that there's that back access off of Eucalyptus Hill Road, or basically the top of Clifton. It might kind of seem to a lot of citizens that the only access would be off APS.
Right.
And one question I have in regard to that kind of pedestrian ramp is it has those really tricky bollards, like you're going through a line at Disneyland and they're kind of reconfiguring your direction a couple times. And so I think the vast majority of students walk to that campus. I know some students bike, and certainly we try to support that. They probably need to walk their bikes up that ramp because of the steepness. But I wonder if that is at all within the parameter of the project, if that access ramp is being looked at.
For this project, the specific grant that we got, and specifically the federal grant that we got, it is limited to these specific 5 intersections. So that with this project won't be addressed necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Coffin-Gray.
Yeah, on this map here on Salinas Cacique, do you have an overlay to show the existing, what it looks like right now, so we can see the changes? I mean, this looks real. I like what I see, but I'm curious. I'd like to see where the road is currently now versus what is expected to be.
Just switch back and forth from the other slide.
So this
Oh,
is
okay.
the existing.
Okay.
So you can see the curb offsets there.
Okay, great.
I don't have one that shows both of them, but. So the center line offset is 15 feet. The actual curb offsets, I believe, on the west side, which is the southern side, and looks like the southern side in the photo. I think the offset of that curb is about 12 feet, and the one on the opposite side is about 16 feet. I think 17 feet.
That's a great improvement over what it is right now. That's
Right.
for sure. I know at the listening workshop for the Eastside area, that was Salina Street was brought up, I think, by almost every group there. So I'm glad to see that this is coming forward very early in this whole process. And the only other comment I have is it's also great to see how much matching money we were able to get I mean, for this big project, for the city only have to put out 40,000 versus the rest of the project, I think is very positive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
What is the timeline, Melinda, for implementing these changes?
So we're in basically preliminary design right now, moving into having 30, maybe even 60% plans in the next couple of weeks, and then hoping to, for actually the Measure A money we have to spend before June 2014. And so we're hoping for construction probably spring of 2014, realistically.
Great.
And the goal of this project is to reduce not only accidents, but close calls and just overall greater safety for pedestrians and bicyclists and vehicle flow.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's not an accident history problem at this location, but we're trying to make it improve it for the school-age children walking to and from Cleveland School, so there's a better yield rate for the students to get to the school.
Okay.
Why don't you introduce Laura before you...
Other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I have just one last comment. Actually,
Go.
building off Mr. Kaufman-Gray's point of the substantial grant monies that have been brought in to support this project, I just would really like to applaud not just this project, but the whole process that the city employs to work with the campuses and work with the local residents to really identify needs. And Cleveland does have an extremely high walk-to-school rate, and Salinas is an extremely intimidating through route. And again, that access ramp is really only half a block off Salinas, and the vast majority of all of those students are just on the other side of Salinas. And this project's really important, and really the good work that Coast is doing with hazard assessments at elementary, junior high, and high schools, and the interface specifically that the city has at the mobility coordinator level. It's kind of like the point person for school projects, for pedestrian and bicycling issues, to then look at what potential grants are out there. And I know not only did we bring in the federal grant, but also our local Measure A funds, and then that you all are just kind of taking this past the finish line. It's a great project.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Bush?
One more question from me, too, and this may be obvious, but is it safe to assume that the Salinas and Cacique project also includes sidewalk access ramps at all four corners?
Yes,
it
at all
doesn't
four.
specifically say so, but...
Yes, all four corners. Well, what's really the south corner looks like the southeast in the drawing. That corner already has an access ramp, and we're actually not touching that corner. We are able to, by positioning the offset or the taper where we did, we were able to prevent ourselves from having to do any improvements at that corner.
I've got a question about the way that it appears in the proposed design. Are those cut? Is there just one access ramp per corner, or are they going to be cut into the more accessible?
These ones will be all diagonal, and that's so just one ramp at the corner, and that's just based on the constraints that we're working with. Two of the what looks like the northeast and the southwest corners, those curb radii are going to have to be a little bit larger to accommodate turning movements of trucks. And when you have the larger curb radii, it makes it difficult to fit a dual directional ramp. Okay. And then what looks like the northwest corner, we have such a small parkway and just sidewalk area to work with that we're only going to be able to fit a delta diagonal ramp.
Okay. Yeah, Ms. Horn?
I'm just thinking, when I was over there, I saw a lot of moms with strollers and the extra kids, walking beside them and running ahead and behind and everything. And in looking at the sidewalk ramps at the corners, it occurs to me that one problem with that makes it less safe in a certain instance is if a kid is running ahead and they don't have a curb that like is a drop-off, And I'm just wondering, are there markings on that of any sort of the curb, like to make a border? Just like if a kid ran up there, is there a visual to stop them?
There will be the truncated domes that you see at all the new ramps that we're installing that extend 2 feet into the access ramp. Other than that, it'll just be concrete. There isn't
No paint, no.
But the bump, what you're saying,
Yeah,
I don't
the
think people know what
truncated domes,
truncated
I
dome
don't know
means.
what that is.
They're the like bumps.
Like that.
It's a hard plastic material that has raised bumps in it for a visually impaired person. When they approach the access ramp, they know that they're coming into a change in condition. So it's an advanced warning device, so somebody, a visually impaired person, doesn't step into the street, so they know they're coming to the curb. So I tell you, a kid, when they hit that, they're going to know that something's different there. But putting paint on the ground, it's not going to stop a kid. It has to be some type. It would, to accomplish what you're talking about, it would have to be a physical barrier like a curb, which is kind of productive what we're trying to do by putting an access ramp in.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
And one more thing just before, so I'm actually, my last day with the city is March 12th. So Laura Yanez is going to be taking over this project. So just so you know, she's going to be ushering this across the finish line, as
Okay.
you said. So,
All right.
thank you.
All right. Other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Coffin-Gray?
Well, I'd like to just move that the TCC finds the Safe Routes to School Cleveland project consistent with the circulation element of the general plan.
A second.
All right, Mr. France seconds. Any other comments? I would just say again, thank you for your work on this project. It's really exciting that, to me, we've talked about Safe Routes to School in this area and this project for quite a while. But to me, the part that I feel like we didn't really talk about a lot was the realignment, which is really exciting because anytime we have the ability to do that with 87% grant funds, especially, we should be able to make our roadways more reasonable. So, any other comments, questions? All right. So, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. So it is consistent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. So next, we've got number 6, which is a debrief on Eastside Neighborhood Listening Workshop with Ms. Grant. So we're going to have a PowerPoint and then some plans, or whatever you feel.
I'm going to mix it up.
All right, mix it up.
So good evening, Chair Blackerby and committee members. Jessica Grant with the Transportation Division of Public Works. Thank you for having me tonight. And I'm here to give a status update on the Eastside Neighborhood Transportation Management Planning effort. For those that weren't here this past November, that was sort of my kickoff of the entire planning effort to the TCC. Back in September of 2012, we received direction from council to begin an effort in the East Side in hopes to improve neighborhood livability by addressing pedestrian and traffic safety related issues. So since September, it was the staff to start to organize the effort. And since that time, we've held our first initial workshop. As council direction, we are only to provide 2 workshops, and the first one was, we called it the listening workshop, because as staff, if we were to begin on this planning effort, we didn't want to just go ahead and say, oh, I think we know what all the concerns are, and go ahead and try and put forth a plan. No, we need to take a few steps back. Okay, Eastside residents, what are your concerns? And it was a great workshop. We held it on February 2nd. And by show of hands, which TCC members were present at the workshop? Perfect.
Mr. Coffin-Gray, Mr. France.
Perfect. And just for those that weren't there, it was a facilitated workshop where we had about 8 tables, and I'll show you some of the outcome just of one of the particular tables just to show an example. And we had a staff facilitator at each table, ranging from parks employees to public works employees, community development. And we had a list of questions that we wanted to hear back that would be helpful for staff as we move forward on this effort to know about. And so the 5 major topic issues that we focused on were speeding and traffic laws, lighting, missing access ramps and sidewalk lengths, bicycling, and then getting to the bus and bus stops. We know that MTD is our leader in all the bus route data. We just wanted to tease out more of a concern of, are you having an issue getting to the bus stop? Is there any problems, or when you're at a particular bus stop, is there an issue? So I'll take this moment to just quickly switch over just to show you what one of the tables look like. So this is one of the tables. And we had, again, 5 maps for these issue areas. And so, for example, this one's speeding and traffic laws. So we had certain questions. Because also I wanted to provide a little bit of background. Before we've embarked on this effort, it wasn't like we haven't heard from the residents before, so we wanted to affirm, okay, we've heard over the past couple of years, maybe there's a concern here, concern there, and so that was a really nice piece of the workshop as well. So anyway, the facilitators asked, do you have any concerns about speeding? This particular map, there wasn't a lot of information. Each one, as I'll go through, has different themes. But this one was more just showing the study area. And then as a reminder, the study area for the Eastside planning effort is Cannon Perdido to the north, so basically Salinas Street to the east, Punta Gorda to the south, and to the west, approximately Milpas Street. So anyway, we asked about speeding, and then if there's any concerns about any particular intersections or anything about motorist behavior, pedestrian behavior, etc. And so they would go ahead and mark the map. The second issue area that we discussed was lighting. So we already have a great GIS system here at the city. So we have already records. We have, as you'll see on this map, all the yellow dots are city lights, and then all the orange dots represent Edison lights. As you can see, that primarily city lights in this area are Milpas, and then along Montecito Street. And so this one was a chance to say, okay, given this neighborhood, or if we had very limited funds, what are the areas that you would focus on, etc. And then people would mark the map. In addition to marking the maps, because it varied between tables, we also had flip charts where we would organize the notes. Next one was missing links and sidewalk ramps. So this one was to show the green dots represented where we know that there are access ramps missing in the city. And then the purple was to show where the missing sidewalk links were. So again, trying to get a feel from them for priority, where if we had funding, where would the next ones that they would prefer be located. And bicycle routes, one question that we wanted to get answered, Traffic Solutions SBK is updating their bicycle map probably over the next month or two. And we wanted to hear from residents, are they using the existing crosstown route? If not, why? Is there any concerns of bicycle behavior? And then also we wanted to hear about more if there's any issues with bike facilities such as bike lanes, etc. To hear feedback on existing and if there's something needed. And then the ones with we showed all the locations of the existing bus stops in the neighborhood, and again, if they had any issues via accessing those various bus stops. So that was a little background of what we did. And there was approximately, I would say about 60, 65 residents that attended. We're really happy with the turnout. And then there was also, some board members from TCC, NAC, and city council members, etc. Present. So I'm going to flip back to the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
So, drum roll, please. The what did we hear? What did we hear about what the concerns were? I'm not going to go into all the specifics, but I basically came away with about 8 pages of notes to work with, and then I started to take those notes per each of the tables and then try to figure out what were some of the main themes. So for speeding, there was approximately 10 streets cited that there were concerns about. The second one was poor stop sign compliance or lack of pedestrian yielding by motorists. There was lots of concerns with that. 24 intersections were cited. I think the biggest surprise for me was the ones that were cited. There were a lot of them were near the schools. And next issue, poor crossing skills by pedestrians. A lot of residents felt like that pedestrians just kind of go out blindly as they cross the street, not using the visual cues of look left, look right, look left, or hand gestures to let them know I'm crossing the street, or eye contact with the driver, etc. Lack of neighborhood lighting. Pretty much across, once I gathered all the data from the tables, it was a general concern of the whole study area that more lighting was needed. And for the existing lighting, there was a couple street lights that were reported that were out. They were Edison lights, and happy to report those have been repaired. The other issue areas with the existing street lights along like Milpas and some of the other areas is just that trees are starting to grow back and block the street lights. So that's something that I'll be moving forward with Streets in Edison on for to get that in the queue for maintenance. Missing sidewalk links and missing access. Missing sidewalk links. There's about 5 areas cited, and for staff, no real surprises. It was just affirming that those were some of the issue
They are
areas.
in fact missing.
Yes. Yeah, but Salinas and right near the 5 Points roundabout on Montecito and those continue to be on staff's radar. Obstructions, impediments to existing sidewalks. There's some, not a lot of areas, but uplifted sidewalk for tree roots and all of that. Nothing too major, and then some overheight hedges. Missing access ramps, 29 ramps were cited. The way we prioritize our access ramps in the city, a lot of it, the ones that were circled are also falling on how we prioritize on a point system, about the same. So that was good. The bicyclists, we got a lot of very passionate comments too about bicyclists not abiding by rules of the road, blowing through stop signs or riding on sidewalks, not being properly lit at night. And then bicycle infrastructure inadequacies. There was definitely some streets cited to investigate for staff to look for bike lanes, more striping for sharrows, that type of thing. And finally, the bus stop inadequacies or concerns. There was a few just cited, and I'll be continuing my discussions with MTD of some bus shelter requests. There was concerns about smoking, the level of smoking, and with families and the secondhand smoke at the bus stops. That was interesting, and just having more trash cans near the bus stop areas. So that's again just a brief. I didn't get totally into the meat, and not tonight. I will not get into the approaches. That's my teaser for what's coming up, because that's what staff is busy working on, because that will be the second workshop. We'll be hopefully trying to get in the beginning of April. I'm trying to do April 6th as a target date. That would be a Saturday. Most of the early feedback from the Eastside residents is that they preferred meeting on weekends versus during the week. I will be going to the NAC on the 13th, just with the similar debrief. And in addition to the workshop, because it's also hard, we can't accommodate everybody's schedule, so we also did a big survey effort as well, where we'll be getting some feedback. And I'll go back to the table because I wanted to show the surveys that went out, and just give me 1 minute. Let's see, I'm going to clear the apps real quick. So a lot of our outreach efforts involved, and our biggest target audience is Eastside families. And so we did form a really good partnership with the school district, and we were able to send out these surveys to the elementary schools, so Cleveland, Adelante, and Franklin, and to get some feedback. They're currently in circulation right now, and let me just go through briefly what it was. It was an information booklet just to tell the residents what the survey was about and what the effort was about. And then we had it was a two-part survey. So the first part was 27 questions. And very similar to the questions that we asked during the workshop, and some go in a little bit more detail. Some are more broader, like what do you like about your neighborhood? Because we always want to hear what the bright spots are. And we also, given the we also have it in Spanish as well. So. And that goes for all the materials that we printed.
And so just to describe what they are, they're bilingual. One way is in English, you flip it over and turn it around, and it's in Spanish on the other way, which is great.
And then similar to the workshop with the maps that I just showed you, is we also included a map and then some crayons, and each item had to do with a different color for crayons. So kind of how do you get to school, or what's your standard route, circle some, and we ask of various issue areas. So anyway, we're that's the next component, and hoping to see probably the same themes that were brought up during the workshop, and to catch if there's anything else that was missed. And I will just I did bring a copy of a survey for each of the TCC members to have as a copy. And we'll probably wait for maybe another 2 weeks of the survey. In addition to doing a hard copy survey, we did an electronic survey as well that went out to the high school and junior high. And we also posted it on our city e-newsletter. It went out on the Coast listserv, Bikes, BC Central, Santa Barbara Bike Coalition listserv, Milpas, Community Association, thank you, as well. So we're in the process of getting that back. And generally right now the survey response is low, hoping that it was a little bit higher, but we are getting responses, so I'm very excited about that. So again, we'll be talking about the approaches, and then we'll be coming back to the NAC and then the TCC in May, and then hope to have a final report to council in June or July. So it's going by quickly. Yeah. Any questions?
Well, I just want to start out by saying that how outstanding this planning process seems to be, it like makes me proud to live in this city and be involved on this committee. Even the materials look good, you know, like not necessarily how it always is with government documents, as you may know. And it's just, it seems really accessible in the materials, the way that it's being talked about, the way everything's being conducted. And so I personally, kind of no matter what comes out of it, I just couldn't be more impressed and proud of how it's rolling out, and you know, really is a model for what we could do in the rest of the city and other neighborhoods, and you know, what other cities should steal these ideas from Santa Barbara to use. So just wanted to start by saying that. But is there any public comment on this, perchance? All right, and I want to note that 2 of our planning commissioners are in the audience, Deborah Schwartz and June Peugeot. So thanks for coming. Questions or comments from committee members?
Just a question.
Yeah, Mr. Goffman-Gray.
These last materials are excellent. Did the city do this, or did we have a special company that contracted out to do this?
It was contracted out. I had my angel task force behind me, and it was with the help of Robert Tonight.
Oh, wonder, because they're just wonderful.
Yes, we've been really helpful
really
because
great
it is a very tight timeline, and for staff to pull up an effort, it takes many people, not only just the internal team with the help of facilitation for the workshop, but also on these materials, so it's appreciated. And also the NAC, some members have also been helpful of handing out surveys to their neighbors of maybe people with non-school age kids, etc., and also it's been distributed at the food distributions as well. So I've had a very nice team.
Great. Yeah, Ms. Horn.
Well, from a public health standpoint, which is my background, I just congratulate you doing the verbal as well as the written, because I haven't seen what the literacy level is on the written stuff, but because it's so important. But just the backup of having all the verbal feedback is just outstanding. So thanks for being due diligence on all of this.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
Madam Chairman?
Yeah.
Hope this is pertinent to the conversation. You mentioned the boundaries on the east side, and there's been a lot of media attention given to the intersection of Milpas and Ortega, or Alphonse, where the young man was killed a couple years ago. Was that brought up in the workshop and the concerns about that particular intersection?
It was not specifically brought up in the workshop, but that unfortunate accident is what got the attention of the folks that live in that neighborhood, that brought it to the forefront. They came before this committee last spring, and then they were at City Council and requested the City Council authorize staff to go and do this neighborhood planning effort in the Eastside area. So they recognized that Milpas Street wasn't the only area where there was issues.
Right.
Yeah, so it was because of that, or partially because of that, we got them focusing on doing more for the east side.
And that, I mean, also what came out of that first, in addition to this planning effort, were improvements to the Ortega and Milpas intersection and Yananali and Milpas as well.
Right,
which
we did.
Those are all installed.
They're installed, working well. Derek Bailey, our traffic engineer, was one who led that effort, and we got the rapid rectangular flashes installed at Yananali and Ortega on Milpas Street, and we have the pedestrian refuge island on at Ortega Street on Salinas Street. You know, this neighborhood was one of the neighborhoods that we identified as one that we want to do a neighborhood transportation planning effort. You know, back in 2001, when the city adopted the neighborhood transportation management plan, but there were a couple other developments that were going on that moved us into other areas. And so now we are in this neighborhood, and Jessica's doing an outstanding job of leading this effort. It's a real tight time frame. We would like to spend more time working in a neighborhood than what we're doing, because there's a lot of the educational components that we would like to talk about we're not able to do. But we're hearing good information, and we're going to come up with some solutions that we're going to be able to bring back to the residents in about a month. So we look forward to bringing it before this committee in May to have your recommendation to the City Council.
Great. Other questions, comments? Mr. France?
Thank you, Chair Blackerby. I would just like to compliment the listening workshop. I was able to participate, and actually by participate, being one listening, not speaking, because really it was limited just to residents. It really was as far as I saw, all hands on deck. I recognized a lot of transportation staff, public works staff, even Parks and Rec staff, and the ability for you all to break apart into a series of small groups, have a lot of visual aids, and in an intimate group, I mean, just around one plastic table, basically get feedback. I think probably got a lot better feedback than if you all hadn't been innovated and just had, in a big group setting, just expected kind of more of the usual suspects to make comments. Because I think that probably got a lot of folks who might be intimidated to speak in a big public setting. I think you elicited a lot of feedback that I'm really glad just to hear the quantity of feedback and also the detail in these different kind of layers of different type of access concerns. So from my perspective, very well done.
Other questions, comments? All right. Well, thank you so much again, and we're excited. And now we'll expect all city documents to be this attractive from now on. So
I do have another plug. Inside Santa Barbara is covering a piece, and I believe it's airing tonight.
Oh, boy.
So, and if not, you could always go on your computer and check it out there. But it's a nice recap of the workshop and planning effort. It provides really good background. So it's about a 10-minute piece, and so I urge you all.
So if you're watching at home, stay tuned.
Watch it. Yes.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Any other comments on that? All right. Thank you. All right. Moving on. Number 7, selection of chair and vice chair. As you know, it's still February, right? It's still February. This is our first, as our first meeting of 2013. So this is something that was going to be on our December meeting, but we figured we might as well have the new committee here to make these decisions. Were you going to say something, Mr. Allen?
No.
Oh, okay. So here we are, chair and vice chair. We have some relatively new members, but the vice chair has generally been someone newer because we've had quite a bit of turnover in the past few years. So I don't know if people have been thinking about it, but I'll just open it up to the body.
Chair Blackerby, if I could make a comment as a recently outgoing chair. There has been a kind of informal tradition in the TCC to cycle through chairs and vice chairs, appoint a new chair. Typically the vice chair would be a new chair, and then have a new vice chair. As a recently outgoing chair, one thing I would like to voice is there's a certain time requirement to get up to speed. And certainly my experience was, I felt like I got up to speed because the chair has a very important role in helping set the agenda, working with staff, really kind of forecasting what issues are coming up and getting an agenda set well so that we can actually be out home for dinner. And also just give enough time to projects that are coming up. I would actually entertain, if you would entertain nomination to continue on as chair, I think it might be worthy of consideration to do a little bit longer than simply a one-year cycle. The reality is, I think in the past year maybe we've had 5 meetings. I think if you would, if Chair Hillary Blackerby would accept a nomination for retaining as chair, I would wish to nominate you.
Okay. I mean, I think you're right that it does take time to get up to speed, and time has flown.
I'll second the nomination.
Okay. All right. All right.
And let me just clarify with the committee. I think the difference between the committee now than it was a few years ago when the committee had the policy where the vice chair rotated the chair, we were meeting every month. So there was typically 11 to 12 meetings during a year. But because of budget problems, we had to cut back on the number of meetings. Plus, we didn't have a lot of items that we wanted to bring before the committee for your review and consideration. So I think, Ed, you probably had the shortest number of meetings of the when we went to the rotation. I think we maybe had 3, 4 at the most when you were the chair. So I think that's part of the thing what you're expressing, where you didn't really have the ability to have chair as many meetings as prior chairs have when we met on a monthly basis.
If I could continue on, thank you, Mr. Allen. Luckily, I was able to fill in for Mark Bradley on a number of occasions, but there's also a whole apparatus of working with other city commissions. And one of the things is build relationships, and these are long term. I mean, I think it's either every 6 months or every year that there's a meeting of city commissioners, and if we constantly cycle, whereas a lot of other city committees and commissions do not, it's harder for us to be relevant with other committees that we have crossover, which is why I put forward that nomination. I apologize for putting you on the spot.
It's okay. Well, just to answer that, I would be open to it, but obviously other nominations are in order. If there are other people that are interested, and, that have been expressed before, but just I feel like I shouldn't be leading this part if this is about me somehow. But are there other comments or other nominations?
Chair Blackerby, I would support your nomination for all the reasons that Ed has spelled out. I think it'll make us a stronger committee to have the continuity of you remaining as chair for at least another year.
Okay. I'm blushing, honestly. Okay. Well, are there any other nominations? I'll ask once more for chair. Okay. So then all of those, if there's a motion and a second to have me continue as chair for another year, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? I'll abstain out of modesty, I guess. And, okay, well, all right. There's that then. So vice chair, is there anyone, are there any nominations for vice chair? Feel free to self-nominate. Don't be modest if it's something that you're interested in. It is an important role, and that, you're going to be a little more involved than just your average committee member in, moving things along. If I'm not here, you're the boss. And yeah, so is there anyone who might be interested in that?
Chair Blackerby, if I
Yes.
could just again put someone on the spot, I'd like to compliment Mr. Keith Kaufman Gray for just the continuity and level of kind of research and looking in and following up with projects. More than a few occasions as a younger and fresher to various issues that have gone through just years of planning that we certainly haven't want to let go of. Mr. Kaufman Gray has dug up the circulation element, dug up documentation, kind of see projects to the finish line. It's been really critical, I think, to the work of this group. And I really want to thank Mr. Kaufman Gray for serving as vice chair, and I think a few cycles back as chair. And I wanted to put Mr. Kaufman Gray on the spot to see if he would be willing to serve again, or what his thought might be.
Sure, I would serve again.
Okay, I'd second that nomination. Okay, are there any other nominations for vice chair? All right, okay. Well, then all those in favor of re-electing Mr. Kaufman Gray as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Well, here we are. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. There's one more announcement before we go, and you have a lovely little packet and another packet and a thing to sign. Mr. Allen will.
Real
describe.
quick, members of the committee, Madam Chair, is the City Council adopted guidelines for our city advisory groups at their February 12th City Council meeting, and we've included a copy of the guidelines for your information. And one of the things that the council has requested is that the committee members sign there's a piece of document acknowledging that you have received a copy of this document. I'm not going to go into this tonight. If you want me to spend more time reviewing this, we can do that at the next meeting, because I frankly just got it last week and I haven't reviewed it carefully yet, but I'm more than happy to spend some time going over it if the committee would like to spend some time on that, or we can do it in an informal workshop setting if you would like to do it that way. Other piece of information is that on May 8th, they're going to have their annual workshop for advisory committees where the city attorney is going to talk about the Brown Act. He's also going to do ethics training. This committee was not designated as a committee that was required to have ethics training, but you're more than welcome to attend it if you want to. That's going to be on May 8th at 4:30 at the Faulkner Gallery. So if the committee members, if you just want to email Kim and let me know if you want to have a workshop where we can go over this, or if you feel comfortable just reading it, maybe go through it first, and then maybe get back with Kim or myself to let me know if you want us to spend more time going over it.
Okay. And just for the benefit of the public, the thing we're signing is not something that says, I've read it, but it says, I've received it, and I promise to read it and understand it.
And follow it.
And follow it, yes, as well. And it's a little thick, so we'll need our time.
And I think maybe one thing just to be clear on, I think it was brought up at the city council meeting. It's only happened a couple of times where members of the committee had a conflict of interest and they had to abstain. And the advice of the city attorney is when you have to abstain from the item is you not only step down from the dais, but leave the room. Now we have a monitor in the hallway so that you can monitor the item to see when it is up. There's this concern even being in the room that might, in the presence of a member who felt they have a conflict, might influence other members of the committee. So to be err on the side of caution, it's best if you have a conflict just to step out of the room so there's no issues or problems in that regard.
So it's more than when in doubt, sit it out. When in doubt, exit the premises.
And I really encourage a committee member before a meeting, if you feel that if you're questioning whether or not you have a conflict of interest, get a hold of me, me directly, not Kim, and I request you give me a couple of days' notice in case if I'm not 100% certain of the answer, I'm going to seek the advice of the city attorney's office. But 9 times out of 10, I can give you my perspective and give you some guidance whether or not you should step down or not.
Great. Yeah, and I think that it probably would be a good idea to have some type of training on this, just because, when these things do happen in the city, it's generally when something is happening or is in question or has come to a head, and it's better to have everything laid out clearly, both for committee members and for members of the public, so they know what's kosher and what isn't, and what to expect.
In terms of future meeting dates, and we definitely are going to have a meeting in May. Want to explore any interest of this committee of having, and I haven't talked to the Downtown Parking Committee yet, but maybe having a joint meeting with the Downtown Parking Committee. I'm thinking about April. It would be, unfortunately, at 7:30 in the morning here to go over the results of the survey that we had done for the bike station.
Yeah.
So the bike station is under the purview of downtown parking, but this bike and alternative modes is the purview of this committee, so it's kind of a crossover. So if the committee's interested in that, I will work with the chair of the Downtown Parking Committee to have a joint meeting. So it'll be 7:30 in the morning in this room, and they meet the second Thursday of the month, and that will be April 11th. I should know that because the following day is my anniversary.
Well, happy anniversary in advance.
And the other thing, we met tonight at 5:30. I don't know how the committee feels about a 5:30 start time instead of a 6 p.m. start time. If they would like to move our start time to 5:30 instead of 6 p.m., it's kind of like at your pleasure. I know it does make it easier for you to get home, and especially if you work, you don't have an hour gap. If you can make it here by 5:30, I'm not forced. Not going to push the issue with the committee. I just want to explore that with the committee if you want to do a 5:30 start instead of a 6 p.m. start.
Is that something that a motion would be helpful on to officially change the time of the meeting?
Not a motion. It's kind of a nod if that's something you want to do, and I would agendize it at the next meeting so you can take a formal action on it.
Okay. Well, let's agendize that. Personally, it works great for me, and I think everyone.
Difficult for me.
It's difficult for you. Okay. All right. we can talk about the
We
next
can talk in the
meeting.
next meeting. I don't want to make it difficult for any one member. If it's going to be tough for a member to be here at 6, then
Right.
I don't want to make it inconvenience for one.
Because we're going to be here at 6 anyway, even
Right.
if our meeting's at 5:30. So.
So I don't want to make it so one member's going to be late or can't be here, or he's going to
Yes.
have to leave work early. So I just wanted to explore it. I have some things I have to get to this evening. That's why I want to start earlier. And it's easier for Kim, too, getting home via the bus versus having to get a car.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Anything else? Okay. All right. So, motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
All right. And any opposition to adjourning? No, of course not. All right. We're adjourned. Thank you.